Hello, my name is Jacob, and welcome back to the Wisdom of Odin. Today I want to share with you 3 different types of grounding techniques, or at least 3 different ways you can kind of go about it. Now, grounding is something that is fairly new age, or at least the term grounding, but the techniques around it are stuff that goes back for thousands of years of human history. I mean, meditation really is a type of technique, and that's what I use for the most part. Now, if you want to know specifically the Nordic version of meditation, I do have a video on Utasita, which is what we know historically about Nordic meditation. And so the grounding in itself is not a specific pagan practice. You don't have to be a pagan to ground, but I do think it's very useful in a pagan practice today. So the 3 different types of grounding I want to talk about today, one of them being here in nature, is grounding in nature. And then I also want to talk about grounding in big cities to help with anxiety and getting overwhelmed. And then the third type of grounding is one that I don't know if it has a specific name. I'm not an expert in this. These are just things that I've kind of come up with along the way that I wanted to share with you. But the third one, I almost describe as like the checkpoint system, the save system, almost from like the video game world. But it's a way to kind of savor moments in life. So I find that grounding in nature is very different than grounding in a city, because grounding in nature, I feel, is really absorbing what is around you here and really paying attention to what is here. Because when you just look at a normal vista of nature, it can be hard to really soak it all in. Looking at all the trees, all the plants, all the stones, all the bugs, all the birds, there's so much in nature to really take in that I feel like we just get overstimulated. And so really, when you're trying to ground here, trying to ground in nature, I find that meditating and thinking about the individual aspects that are around you, because often I find that nature is calming to us. And so I think this is a great way to help reduce anxiety, stress, but also a way to savor a moment, much like we'll talk about later. So while sitting here in nature, I'll typically, just close my eyes for a second, take some deep breaths, really think about the air entering my lungs. Is it clean? Because if you're coming from a city, you're not used to clean air. So breathing in that clean air. Remember that these leaves and these trees and these plants are taking in the carbon dioxide that we're putting out and giving us back oxygen. So there really is a give and take from nature. So as we breathe out, they're breathing in and giving us back the breath. These leaves are what give us life as well. And so really connecting to the breath, just like any form of traditional meditation, but then really picturing us having that communication with the trees through our breath. And then after that, I'll still keep my eyes closed, and then I really start paying attention to the sounds around me. Do I hear birds? Do I hear insects? Do I hear, animals going through the brush? Or do I just hear silence? And then if I hear something, I kind of focus on it. Okay, let's focus on that one bird over here chirping. Let's picture that bird. Still hear it. And then what about the other bird over here? Can I hear that too? Is it the same bird? Are they talking to one another? And we really start to understand the relationship of those 2 birds. And then by the time we're done with the meditation, done with the grounding, you'll understand that there's a relationship between those 2 birds. You'll understand the relationship we have with the trees around us. So you already understand one set of relationships, which will just make you feel more connected in general to the nature here and allow you to get more out of it. And this certainly is where this takes the more pagan turn, because obviously this is a nature-based religion. I mean, no matter what form of paganism you follow, it's a nature-based thing. You're really trying to commune with nature. And especially any of us, most of us don't live in huts in the woods. I mean, if you do, I don't think you really need these techniques so much. But for those of us who do this, live in apartments and houses and in cities and in neighborhoods, it can be really hard to really send away what we're used to on the day-to-day. Send away the noise of cars, send away the noise of ambulances. While I'm still living here in Europe, oh my gosh, I hear ambulances and police all the time. They're oh my gosh, like getting that noise, that synthetic noise out of your mind, this is a really great way to do it. So I really find that focusing on the individual aspects of the things that are around us, as far as the birds, the trees, animals, stones, again, you can even open your eyes. This doesn't have to be a traditional form of meditation. Opening your eyes and focusing on one spot, on one rock, on one set of moss, on what's happening there. Looking at this stone right over here, I see the moss, I see insects flying over it. I see spider webs going to it, the sun reflecting off of it. But when you look at the big picture, it can be really hard to absorb all of that. So I really do think that grounding in nature is a really great way to fully absorb what nature can do for us. And it really is to cleanse us of the modern world that we live in. So I really recommend doing this whenever you're out. I mean, it doesn't have to be an hour. It doesn't have to be 30 minutes. It can just be 10 minutes, 5 minutes, just enough time to sit back and really absorb what you are doing, absorb the benefits of nature and the relationship we have to it. So with that, we're focusing on things, we're focusing on absorbing the things around us, but in big cities, it can be really hard to drown out what is around us, especially bigger cities with subway systems, cars, planes, noise, music, people. So that's the next section here, is talking about how to remove all of the oversaturation from the modern world that we live in now. Because when you're in a city like Munich here, or any large city, it can be really hard to relax, to calm down, to find your center. And again, I've found it very hard to actually, find peace in a big city, unless you're trapped inside of your apartment. But I don't think that's something that we necessarily want to do, especially as pagans, as people that want to have more mindfulness and connection to nature, is we don't want to just stay inside of our homes. But again, then as soon as you leave, you're in a busy place like this. So this isn't the best place to have a conversation. So let us find a better location, kind of talk about some techniques that I have kind of figured out and use while spending time in places like Munich. And so the first piece of advice I have for you on how to ground yourself when living in a big city is simply to go to a park. I do find I have lived in multiple size cities, ranging from small cities like I grew up in with 20,000 people to the place I live currently in the United States with 350,000 people in Lexington, and then here in Munich with millions of people living in the area. Areas like this can be really hard. But typically when you live in a bigger city, you have more access to parks, or at least I hope you do. But usually you can find something. So find that park, find that little swath of nature that the city has set aside for you and use it. I know that sometimes they're not as nice as being out in nature, but I mean, it's better than just sitting around in your apartment. And I think that is one of the hardest things about being in a city, is we do want to close ourselves off and just stay in our apartment, stay with our things, watch Netflix. But that's not going to get rid of the anxiety. That's not going to make you feel more connected to the gods or to your spirituality. So I really recommend using the parks that you have in your cities. Now, obviously, use common sense, be safe, go to the parks that are safe if there are any. But yeah, highly recommend getting to a park and just walking, sitting, breathing in, and just having those connections with nature around you, kind of like what we talked about in that last section. The reverse of that advice is if you're in a big city and you're not in nature, you're in your apartment, in your flat, or just kind of in a busy area, or maybe at your office, using breathing techniques and meditative techniques to ground yourself by closing off the outside world, by closing off those ambulance noises, those car noises, by closing off all the people running around you in the city. So even if you just take those 15 minutes inside of your office space or inside of your apartment and just breathing, focusing on the breath and focusing on the stuff within yourself. So breathing in and out, closing off your thoughts, closing off the outside noise, focusing on how you're feeling, how do your legs feel, what does the ground feel like, what does it feel to touch the tips of your fingers, just really focusing on the moment. And I find that these kind of things are really going to help you close off the insanity and give you a moment of respite, because I know how it is. I mean, honestly, I get quite a lot of anxiety, and I've noticed it's passive. It's a passive anxiety being in a city, sitting in a subway for a long period of time, then to make it to the train station, to sit in a train for a long period of time. These are very passively anxiety causing things. And it's definitely something I've noticed, is that I'm like, wow, why is my heart kind of racing right now? It's like, oh, it's because I've been stuck in this little tube with a million other people. And, and these things do cause it. And I think that's perfectly okay to admit. And I think a lot of us don't realize it when we're living in these cities, that they are causing us a lot of anxiety. And these kind of things, anxiety is a really big thing that I think cuts us off from the gods, cuts us off from spirituality. And so I really do think finding that time, that 15, 20 minutes a day to just focus on your breath work, to focus on some meditation, will really help you disconnect from the busyness of the world, and definitely putting down your phones for extended periods of time as well. I think phones have become our sanctuaries in busy cities, and that's where we focus. That's our world. But I think meditative techniques are going to be more helpful for you than just putting yourself on your phone. So this third section here, I really wish I recorded this while I was there, but it was just one of those things where I had to do it myself. I recorded some footage. So while on my road trip across Scotland, I did the entirety of Scotland in like 4 days. days, traveling with Kevin and Lauren in the community. And I really was just getting overwhelmed, oversaturated once again. And I think that's one of the things grounding is really good for, is when you just get oversaturated by positive or negative things, or you really need to focus and saturate yourself from nature, like I was talking about earlier. But while traveling across Scotland, I was actually right at the point of Loch Ness. I was at Urquhart Castle on Loch Ness, and I was just sitting there, literally witnessing a double rainbow across Loch Ness, looking at this ancient castle, looking at Loch Ness, trying to find Nessie, about to go to an ancient burial mound, having just come back from Glencoe and Kilmartin Glen and the Castle Rig stones. I saw so much that I honestly could not hold anymore. And I was really worried I was not absorbing the experiences that I was having along the way. And this really worried me. So I actually, in Urquhart Castle, went to the top of this one spot and I meditated and I just absorbed the moment. This is kind of what I've hinted at earlier in this video, is this idea of a checkpoint system or a save system. I really think grounding techniques, meditation, are a really good way to savor a moment, to absorb something and to save it in your mind. Because when we go in these fast-paced lives we live in, even when we're doing something really fun and amazing, like the gatherings in our community, for anyone attending these gatherings, they're full of so many spiritual experiences that I think could be really beneficial to actually sit down and absorb the moment, and hit that save button. I mean, maybe this isn't translating well for people that don't play video games, but saving in a video game, you're traveling across Skyrim or any video game, and you get to a point where you're just like, oh my gosh, so much has happened, and you gotta hit that save button. And if you get worried if you don't hit that save button, right? You don't hit that save button in life. Obviously we can't go back. We can't literally go back in time. But we can actually go back in our memories. So actually sitting down at the castle, absorbing that experience, absorbing the sensory information around me, I can better remember those moments. Because yes, I'm going to be overwhelmed. There's no going away from that. But at least I've taken the time to save it more in my mind. So I hope that actually makes sense. So while I was there, I was sitting on top of this, and again, I was just observing what was around me. I was taking those breaths in. What did the air smell like? I put my hands, I touched the rock, touched the grass. I was touching, saving in my mind, I am touching Scottish moss on a Scottish castle. This is what Scottish moss on a Scottish castle feels like. I opened my eyes, I looked out, I saw the loch, I saw the mountains. This is what Scottish mountains look like. This is what Loch Ness looks like. I was telling myself in my mind, using that repetitive nature to really build in, like, you are in Scotland. This is beautiful. This feels amazing. Savor this. Remember this. And that way, again, when I meditate at my house, when I use those techniques, when I'm feeling overwhelmed at my house, I can go back. I can remember, okay, what did the Scottish moss feel like? What did the air smell like? What were those mountains like? What was it like to get pelted by the rain, to see that double rainbow? So saving those moments, again, we can't go back in time. We can't actually go back. But what we can do is remember those moments in future life, when life gets too busy, when cities get too busy, and you can go back to that save file, you can go back to that memory and really absorb it once again and remember, wow, I was there. And the last thing I'll add in this section, this is a really good way to make sure life slows down. We hear that cliche of everyone saying, oh, life's flying by. Oh, I'm 30, oh, I'm 40, I'm 50. Life has flown by. I hear it all the time from everyone around the world. Oh, I'm too old. Oh, I just let go of my life. I think this is a really good way to slow life down. And again, this isn't necessarily a pagan thing, but to me it kind of is enjoying the life we have here. We don't typically follow this path because we're obsessed with the afterlife. We're obsessed with what's going to happen when we die. We're doing it because we want to connect to the world, to connect to all this around us, to savor the moments, to savor what the essence of life, to really truly absorb it. And I really think these grounding techniques, meditation, and everything I've discussed in this video really is a great way to slow life down. And so when you're like, oh, I'm 30, I'm 40, I'm 50, you don't say, wow, life is so short and so fast. Again, I'm sure there's people watching this video like, oh, when you hit 38, when you hit 48, you won't be thinking that. But I really think I will be, because I have been using these techniques. And this is how I've really been trying to savor, the last, really my life hasn't been anything until I started this YouTube channel. It is truly an amazing experience, and it's felt like a lifetime. And part of that is just because I have really tried to slow down and absorb the moments I'm living in. So I really hope these techniques are something that you can take into your life. I know this is not something that, you know, I don't have a degree in this. I don't have any formal training in this. I've just lived life. I've practiced meditation and mindfulness techniques for years. Before I was a pagan, I was kind of interested in Buddhism. So I really took a lot from that. But then also in my pagan times with meditation, Uttasita, and then trance work, you know, bringing all those things in, feeling connected to this is so important. If you're feeling disconnected from the gods, disconnected from your faith, this is the way to get reconnected, or at least one of the ways to get reconnected. But I think it's one of the best ways. But truly, thank you for joining me for this video. I'm glad. I hope it was helpful for you. And yeah, let me know what you do down below, because this isn't the only way to get reconnected. Again, I just think it's the best way. But let me know other techniques you use for grounding, meditation, and ways to feel reconnected again to yourself and to the spiritual world all around us. And if you're interested in being one of these people going by in the credits, please think about joining me on Patreon. It's really the only way I'm able to do this, to come to these amazing places, to talk about these topics, and to share this information with all of you. So thank you to all the wonderful people going by here, but there's lots more benefits on there, including our community Discord, live streams, early access videos, and of course, the names in the credits. So thank you so much for joining me for this video, and until the hall, Skull.